Ian,
Patrick.
we got a Patreon.
Patreon.com/CU podcast. Get that video podcast in its full. I'll do a writing just as soon as I settle, and you can vote on a poll.
Is this our Monty Python song we're trying to do?
I just pulled that out of my ass, so there's that.
Well, speaking of music, in third place on our Patreon poll topic this week, what video game should be turned into a Broadway musical? 11%. Wow, almost single digits. That's bad. Second place, 17%. Favorite things about the start of summer, and were you a beach kid? 17%. And in first place, wow, this is a huge win. This is a Putin election right here with no shenanigans going on at all. What are modern gamers missing out on that 80s and 90s gamers had, Ian? What are modern gamers missing out on? They're not missing out on that Gamer Girl game, though.
No. I think one thing that modern gamers are missing out on, and it's been on my mind, actually, but there's no manuals in games anymore. And it's becoming something that I think a lot of people, like, they haven't been in games for years and years and years now. And it's something that I think people are just kind of realizing was taken away from them, but like they're realizing it late, because I keep getting a lot of people who like will call me up and be like, hey, do you have this game for the PS4? Do you have this game for the Xbox One? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, is it complete? I'm like, do you mean it has the box? Does it have a manual? It never came with a manual. There are just no manuals in these games anymore, and I don't know where that cutoff happened. It happened sometime in the it happened sometime during the PS3 360 era, because like some of them, like say Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, I had someone ask for a complete copy of that the other day, and I was like, was there even one? And there is, but it's like a 3-page black and white brochure that shows you like what your controller looks like, and not to eat it and get an electrical shock or whatever. It's
not to eat the manual.
The controller.
Do not eat this.
Do not eat this. And I very fondly remember manuals. Not everyone like was as weird about them as I was, but I would get a new game and I would take the manual to school and I would read through the manual, or I would read it on the bus home.
I never did that.
Picking up the game
with my NES manuals,
and it helped. Like I like to be able to jump into a game and start playing. One of the biggest things that kills me about modern games is overly long tutorials. I have no problem with a basic tutorial in game. It's nice. Even when games had manuals, a lot of times they'd run you through, okay, press your A to jump, press A and B to do, your fucking super sweep kick and
super sweep kick.
And, it's nice. But now, because there is no manual and these games get excessively complex, you spend 3 hours learning the game before you even get into it.
Are they really that long, some of them?
Some of them are. You're closer to 2 hours, and it's absolutely fucking mind-numbing to me. It's not fun. I would rather have some basic stuff in a manual that I can access at any time, and then, like an in-game help file that I can access, or the ability to turn tutorial stuff on and off. But now all that tutorial stuff is usually built into the storyline of the game, and it's fine. It's an issue I have with AAA games in general. I'm a much better learner by text than I am visually, because I can go at my pace when I'm reading text.
Well, manuals became less necessary when games obviously became more visually defined, and it was easier to tell stories. When you look back to something like Legend of Zelda and their glorious manual, which is like fucking 45 pages long or whatever it was.
Beautiful full color art. The story thus far.
I'm surprised Nintendo never reprinted that artwork as like paintings, like officially. That original Zelda artwork.
It's so good.
You get the backstory. You're like, wow. Oh, wow. Look at this.
Yeah.
A dying woman comes and says, oh, save the princess. It's like, oh, okay, this is a little heady for an NES game.
It literally says in there that like they sprinkle Link's blood on his ashes. Like, it gives you a lot of flavor to the game.
Yeah, you're like, wow, this is I just played a dumb game with a little ninja jumping around before, and now I'm playing this epic. Well, I wouldn't know it was an epic, unless you jumped in. So it puts your mind in a certain place before you dove in to the game. And yeah, you want to learn how to play the game. With something like Legend of Zelda, you should read the manual, because it gives you a good head start, and it lets you know, oh, you got to find the boomerang in the first level. You got to find this there, and you would need that if you're a 7 or 6 year old. You're going to get lost. at that young of age. So you definitely needed that. But obviously, as you got the internet and games became more, they became more complex, but they allowed you to tell the story easier on screen. I guess developers decided we don't need the manuals anymore. Like, we just don't need them as much. We're going through tutorials. We hired voice actors and actresses, and we have all this stuff going on. What's the point? But it's a shame though, because obviously your imagination becomes less and less. You don't need your imagination anymore to play games.
Sure.
You just don't. You needed the imagination up to a certain point in time, obviously. Like when you're playing an adventure on the Atari, you need an imagination to know what the hell, to sort of form ideas about. Oh, I'm a knight in a castle fighting a dragon. No, you're a fucking little pixel dot going around.
Sure. And I mean, to that point, and this, I realize some of this is just going to sound like cranky old man stuff. I'm not trying to be cranky. If you enjoy the way games are modern in modern times, that's cool. I still think manuals would be nice. But my other complaint was, it took me a long time to get used to voice acting being introduced in games, because that was really like a big thing they needed to check off to like fully transition games into becoming more like cinema.
Sure.
Was having voices. Previously in RPGs, I could still to a degree create that character in my head, what they sounded like and things like that. And as time has gone on, a lot of that ability to actually role play in a role-playing game has been taken away.
Because you're not actually becoming the character, you're just watching someone perform the character.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
So, voice acting took me a long time to get used to, because I always wanted the voices in my head. I didn't want, some...
Ian wants the voices in his head.
Have you voices in my head? Oy, oy, oy. Anyways. Yeah. Another thing, and this was kind of like what... got the topic on this thing was we were trying to figure out a way to word something about rental stores, but to me that's more movie based. But rental stores were cool simply because you were limited to what was there. You had to pick something, and you were more likely to sit down and play the shit out of it.
You had to. You had 48 hours.
Exactly. I feel like rental stores in the past gave you a sense of focus that you don't so much have now.
Sure.
Whether it was with a movie or games, you were focused on what you were picking. There wasn't endless supplies. You had to pick something and leave, and then you had a small time period to get through it.
Frank Cifaldi, we love Frank, right? We
Yes.
love sharing Long Island pizza with him, hopefully next year again. He's had a great line in Not For Resale. He said, limited choice might make you a more interesting person because you force yourself to be open to entertainment you wouldn't normally be open to.
Yes, and that's absolutely true. It's why
I'm not sure about the interesting person part, but I see his point about it forces you to get influences you wouldn't normally.
You're going to know more about the stuff that you know about too. Is another way to look at it.
You're gonna get out of your comfort zone more.
Yes, and it's when I first met you, this was one of the first conversations I remember us having. It's why I hate MAME cabinets. It's not because I hate or despise emulation. It's because personally, for me, when you give me a list of games like that, I am never ever going to pick one and play it the way it should be played.
You would never play a random one you would never have had.
Or I would, but I'm not going to give any time into it because I'm going to be like, okay, this is neat, but what else? Okay, this is neat, but what else? There is something to be said about limiting your choices and limiting what you're working with.
Yeah, the t-shirts. The button never bothered you that much on there. I like the fact that there was mystery to games. You had no clue how the games played. You had magazines that had pictures of it, talked about it. You had no clue how these games actually played until you played them.
Less coverage. There was far less coverage of games. It was far easier to avoid info about a game. If you wanted to go into a game blind, it was oftentimes easier to go into it blind than it would be informed.
No, but even if Nintendo Power covered a game like Contra, I have no clue how that game actually feels.
Sure.
How it sounds. If it's smooth to control, you had no idea. You had to actually experience it, and that was one of the great things. But it also led you astray because if you go into that rental shop, or if you bought a game, I still marvel at some of these games on the NES that are actually common, that aren't that good games at all. like Magmax, where it's like, who actually looked at on the VidPro card at Toys R Us and said, "Oh, that looks interesting." That's obviously the counterpoint. You had to take that chance based upon, "Oh, does that look interesting to me?" Oh, okay. Not that Magmax is a terrible game, but I mean, like,
Magmax or Mad Max?
Magmax.
Magmax is pretty fun.
Mad Max is miserable.
Mad Max is awful. Yes.
I don't forget what did I review Mad Max anyway. But you see what I mean, though. You're just taking a chance. There was a mystery. There was a gamble in a way that was not that the gamble part of finding a good game is a sexy part of being a game player growing up, but there is something to that where you have the chance of being extremely disappointed by a game that cannot happen anymore. It's almost impossible in modern times to buy a game and not know exactly what you're getting.
With how covered the games are these days, and this is both good and bad. Mostly good. This is mostly good. As long as you want the information, it's there. Reviews, yes, reviews should exist, but the need for reviews feels lessened these days because by the time a game has released, you've seen enough of it to know, okay, this is up my alley or it's not.
Well, now they play. We taught this before. This could be a topic we did a few years ago. Now you could just reviewers play through 10 hours of a game. They put footage of it online, or YouTubers and streamers. You could see half the game before it comes out sometimes.
Yeah. Before
you have your chance to get a copy. And I don't know. That mystery is gone.
I don't know.
Are you mocking me, Ian?
I don't know.
You're trying to do a Monty Python character?
No.
It's Monty Python heavy podcast. But yeah, there's no more mystery left to some of these games. Like almost every game of any notoriety is played on, it's streamed, or it's on YouTube. You can find a review of it. It's amazing when you think about it. The same thing with any movie nowadays. You can find a review of any little movie that comes out, or any little Netflix premiere. Like, you can find it. But that's just totally gone. It's missing. And I don't know if I prefer that. Maybe it was more interesting time when you don't know what you were playing when you were renting. Because we've all rented duds before.
Yeah.
I never forget Magic Star Video. I love that logo. It was a little magic little wand and everything. God, I love that name. Magic Star Video. Rented Mickey Mouse Capade, Wizards and Warriors. Rented both of them. Neither one of those are games I truly love, but boy, did I force myself to play those that weekend. I forced myself to play just those two games, and Wizards and Warriors to this day I don't like, because as a kid I probably couldn't get to the third stage of that hard-ass game.
Wizards and Warriors is not a good game.
The controls are so bad in that game. But I have a fondness for Wizards and Warriors because of that experience, though. It will never be one of my favorite games, but we put that piece of garbage in the video game years. I'm not sure we had to, because we all remember that game.
We didn't need to do a lot of things that we did in the video game years.
No, I was talking to some things I shouldn't have been talked to in the video game years. But anyway, but Mickey Mouse Capade, I'll always remember renting it and playing it and barely getting to the third stage as a kid. I
fucking love Mickey Mouse Capade. But
good old Hudson Soft game.
But again, that was one that I got for Christmas, and it was you play what you have. If I was exposed to Mickey Mouse Capade now, I'd probably be like, this is cute but pretty rough.
It's what we had and we liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
You know what game I had and didn't like? RC Pro-Am. I was so fucking awful at that game that I never got good at it. I was like,
but I wasn't good as a kid either.
I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it more as I got older. But like the first 2 years I had RC Pro-Am, that game fucking sat there and I stared at it. I was like, you miserable son of a bitch.
That was a game that Kevin had.
Oh, fuck Kevin.
And obviously it wasn't 2 players, so that sucked. If that was a 2-player game, the first one, it would have been a marvelous experience. But the slippery controls I didn't get used to until I got older. There's something to be said about the racing games that I got a lot better at racing games as I got older. I couldn't get to the 4th, 5th stage of Rad Racer as a kid. When I'm older, I think I can get to the last stage before I get into trouble. I don't know why with maybe because you actually drive a car as you get older. I don't know. But RC Pro-Am, yeah, I did not like that game as a kid either. But it's a great game, obviously.
Yes, it's good. One of the few games by Rare that I think is actually pretty.
You like Snake Rattle and Roll?
Snake Rattle and Roll is fun for a few minutes, but it doesn't hold up.
It gets up its own ass a little bit.
That's kind of how I feel about Cobra Triangle. Cobra Triangle is fun for a few minutes.
I never liked Cobra Triangle. Whenever we were playing the marathon, I'm like, I'm not into this at all.
It's an interesting idea, but it's poorly executed.
I like Snake Rattle and Roll 2 players a lot better. There's some fun to be had.
Yeah, you can fuck around with the other players.
Isometric stuff is fun. It gets a little weird sometimes, but
it's nice to look at.
So, yeah.
All right.